Hello everyone, good evening. In this video I'm going to talk a bit about the subject of forgiveness, philosophically, um, philosophically speaking. I say philosophically because it's well established that forgiveness is something that a lot of the major Abrahamic religions often preach. In Christianity it's found in Islam, it's found in other religions, not just the Abrahamic religions I should say. Perhaps Buddhism, Hinduism as well, Sikhism. And I'm not an expert on those religions, so I can't say exactly what this stance is. I'm speaking though about forgiveness more from a secular sense. I think it's a mistake to assume that the whole idea of forgiveness is purely religious. I think it's fair to say there are many people who have been deeply hurt by others, but have found it in themselves to move on and essentially to forgive those people. Now, something's happened today which was it really hurt me. It involved someone very close to me, and that person behaved in a certain way which was very hurtful. She didn't do it deliberately, but inadvertently it hurt me very much, and I won't go into the details out of respect for her privacy, but this is someone who I care very much about, and her actions today deeply hurt me. Before we talk about forgiveness, we have to talk about a bit about the things that bring about the context whereby forgiveness is an option. And that's generally because someone else has caused you pain. That could be from a whole range of reasons. I've always been, my stance on forgiveness has always been rather complex. I generally regard myself as a pretty forgiving person. I tend to not hold grudges against people, although certain individuals have caused a lot of pain in my life. In the case of acquaintances who've caused me pain, or I just don't think about them anymore, but I'm talking about the context about people who close to me who have caused me pain, not deliberately but inadvertently. I believe you'd be a pretty cold person if you never forgave someone in your life. And if you don't forgive people, then you have to be prepared to not be forgiving yourself for your flaws. Now, I have flaws, and I'm sure there's been times when my behaviour or my words have hurt people deeply, whether that be in a moment of anger or a foolish action on my part or whatever. We all have human fragility, so we are all capable of doing things that could potentially hurt others. Now, some people deliberately go out of their way to hurt others, but most people at some point inadvertently hurt others. And if we want good relationships to remain, then we would expect to be forgiven. We would hope to be forgiven for those frailties. This especially applies in the context of cheating partners, when the cheating partner realizes their mistake and begs for forgiveness from the person who has been cheated on. And in that case, he or she will feel an enormous sense of guilt and will seek forgiveness. And then, of course, there's other circumstances where they feel no guilt because they feel the person they've been in a relationship hasn't treated them well, and that was their justification for adultery or whatever. But in cases whereby they've cheated and there really has been very few valid excuses, then they've begged for forgiveness. I think that's definitely a circumstance where that's a really strong dilemma, whether you forgive someone or not. Would I forgive a cheating girlfriend, or even more importantly, a cheating future wife, if that situation ever arises? Thankfully, it's never arisen with me. Would I forgive her? I'd like to say yes, but the truth is you cannot know for certain how you would deal with that situation. I would like to say my love for her outweighs the anger and betrayal that I would feel. I think my line on forgiveness is it has to go in line with if someone is genuinely sorry. There was an interesting video made called 7 Billion Views, I think. It was a French video, but it was people's views on these sort of philosophical questions from all over the world. And one of them was forgiveness. If I can, I'll try and put a link in this video to that. And one guy, I think he was from Algeria, made an interesting point. He said, yes, I would forgive someone who has betrayed me. In Islam, it teaches, the Quran teaches us to forgive those who have hurt us. And that was an interesting point. But he also made the point, you can only forgive so many times. There comes a point when if you could forgive so much, then you just become foolish. Because people will regard that forgiveness as a weakness. And they will ostensibly take advantage of you. So I do think it's fair to say that with forgiveness, there has to be sincerity on the part of the person you're forgiving. And I think that applies to myself. I do believe in forgiving people, because you may well find yourself one day in a position whereby you're seeking forgiveness. So you have to forgive people. And also for yourself to move on. The person I'm talking about today, she hurt me, but I will forgive her. On the grounds that A, she has apologized, and B, I love her. I love her very much. And I don't want the situation today, and I won't go into details about it. It hurt me, but I don't want that to destroy the love I have for her. Because love is a very powerful feeling. And I do think anger is also a powerful feeling, and hurt is a very powerful feeling. We cannot trivialize what that does. Only a few hours ago I was really stressed out about what was happening. But you have to find strength. You have to have a strong heart to forgive someone. Especially someone you love. Especially someone you love. I think it's important to forgive people in general if they show genuine regrets and apology. And that could be anyone. But especially people you love, because, and this isn't from a Christian perspective, because I'm not a religious person, but I do believe in forgiveness to an extent. Now, I don't believe in the sort of forgiveness which some religious advocates seem to stress, whereby you forgive someone for if they are doing the same thing over and over and over again. I don't really believe in forgiveness in that sense, because then I think you're just looking rather stupid. You're setting yourself up to be hurt over and over and over again. An example being, let's say someone steals from you and they're a friend, and they say, I'm sorry, what I done was wrong, but I had to do it to pay off debt or something. You'd be angry, you'd be hurt and betrayed, but you think, okay, I'm going to forgive them this once. But then they do it again and again and again. Now, do you forgive that? I don't think you should. I don't think it helps anyone to forgive that, because you're setting yourself up to be hurt again. You're not actually helping the person who's doing it, because in giving them a license, in excusing them through the forgiveness, and Christians say it isn't excusing, but I think in that context it is, you're not helping them because they're not reforming themselves. It's a bit like not giving criminals justice, and therefore they don't learn anything. They don't learn the right from wrong. If you forgive someone too easily and too much, they won't learn the seriousness of how they have hurt you or hurt others. And also, I believe there are some things that cannot be forgiven. If somebody, this is just a scenario, if somebody murdered the woman I love, there's no way on earth I could forgive that. I know I couldn't do it. And not only would I not forgive it, I believe I'd be capable of seeking revenge. And that's not a boast I make lightly. Clearly, in that circumstance, none of us know how we'll react. But I don't believe I would be someone who would be passive about that. You can argue the rights and wrongs, but I'm just being honest about what my sentiments are. If someone was to hurt the woman I love intentionally, I don't believe I could. Not only would I not forgive them, I believe I would want to exact personal revenge, and maybe that's wrong, but that's an honest sentiment. However, if someone I love hurts me, I do think it's important not to forgive too quickly. You have to express the pain you felt, and if need be the anger, you need to express that anger. But at some point, if you're in a situation where you're going to hate them forever, I think this applies to cheating partners. If I had a girlfriend or a wife who was a cheat on me, and I loved her, that would hurt me immensely. I'd be very angry and I'd feel betrayed. Could I forgive her? Well, the question would lie in if she was genuinely remorseful. If she was, I believe I could. I'd like to think I could do that. And basically, I'd like to just throw the question out there about forgiveness. People watching this video, to what extent can you forgive someone? Maybe you're a very forgiving person, you'd forgive in every circumstance. I don't quite go along with that. I think that sets you up to be vulnerable. I believe in forgiveness, but I also believe that it has to go in line with sincere apology, sincere remorse from the other person. And I also believe forgiveness can give you personal peace. Now that I've settled in my mind that I'm going to forgive this person that I'm talking about, I do feel more at ease. But then again, I partly feel at ease only because I've spoken to her. If I hadn't spoken to her, if she hadn't contacted me, maybe I'd still be feeling angry and betrayed. You cannot have closure if you don't have dialogue. That's a fact. And just a side point, I would strongly recommend, just from my experience, if you've had a big argument with someone or a major difference of opinion, if there's things that have to still be said, doing the silent treatment won't help anyone. Don't ignore people. By all means, get your point across and let them have their point, but don't. I think that's very destructive to just ignore people. You have to get it out in the open. I'm not saying, debate and debate and debate and debate, but you have to get those sentiments out in the open, otherwise you're going to be hurt a lot more. But in the general nature of forgiveness, I do believe it's important. There's some things I can't forgive. When someone has been in a position where they've deliberately done something, they've known it will hurt someone else, and they haven't done it out of anger or spur of the moment, but they've done it out of sheer callousness. That's why, for example, I cannot forgive dictatorial regimes who deliberately torture dissidents, so I can't forgive that. I'm not saying I believe that the same thing should happen to them in an eye for an eye. I'm not saying that, but I can't forgive that sort of thing because the cruelty is just too extreme. I think in those circumstances, forgiveness almost trivializes what has happened. Now, the victims themselves, it's up to them whether they want to forgive or not, but I cannot forgive that sort of cruelty, of those sort of extreme human rights abuses, because the nature of regimes is they never apologize anyway. On a very, very, very rare occasion you will get remorse, and then the issue of forgiveness is more out in the open. But mostly when you get war criminals or ex-dictators, they make excuses, and they'll say they were only following orders, they were only introducing stability, etc., etc. They don't give a damn, they only care about their own skin. So I don't believe there should be forgiveness in those circumstances. I don't necessarily believe in revenge either. But forgiveness is a very interesting philosophical question and sentimental question. And I'm just going to throw the question out there. How do you feel about forgiveness? To what extent would you go personally in forgiving someone? To what extent do you believe that sincerity on the other part is important? To what extent do you believe it's a religious issue or not a religious issue? So generally those are questions that circulate around forgiveness. You cannot, I don't think you can live with hate in your heart for people that you have loved. So I believe forgiveness is important, but it's something that you need to really, it's an interesting philosophical question. Okay, cheers.